You've been listening to the True Idaho News Podcast. Unfiltered news and opinion for the citizens of Idaho. Get more true news by visiting trueidahonews.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit trueidahonews.com/support. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Shane Class here with True Idaho News. And today, I wasn't really sure what I was going to speak about. I'm flying solo today. I'll have somebody on with me, and it makes it really easy. We're going to talk about whatever they want to talk about and just see where the conversation goes. But when I'm flying solo, it's a little bit more difficult. I mean, I look at myself and I say, man, what does Shane have that anybody can benefit from that he can come on here and use some time, because you trust me with your time and I want to make that time valuable. I want to give you something of substance. And I really struggled this morning, and I just spent a little bit of time in prayer. And I thought, afterwards, I felt Lord leading me that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why did I buy True Idaho News? And then I'm going to get into but don't worry, I'm going to get into the politics. We're going to get into the mud. We're going to talk about what's going on with Elon and Trump and all that good juiciness going on, but that everybody loves to hear. But I thought it was important for you, those who have been a follower of True Idaho News for some period of time, and those who have followed me when I had Shane Talks Politics, and I was using that regularly for quite a while, just to let you know a little bit about the history and what led me here and why I'm here. If we start all the way back, for those who weren't following me before, those who have already followed me know my beginnings. I had posted, this is during COVID. I've always kind of been in politics, and I've had friends tell me that I ought to get more into politics. I ought to do more with politics. And so I had some friends telling me that, hey, Shane, you really ought to have a podcast. You ought to have your own page on social media. And one day I started up a page on Facebook after hearing this over and over again, and I called it Shane Talks Politics. And I thought, that's where I'll throw all my political stuff, and I'll kind of clean up my personal feed, which those who follow me know that that didn't really work that way. But I just thought I'd start throwing most of my politics over to Shane Talks Politics, and that was the intent when I started. And it was kind of a joke, to be perfectly honest. And then COVID hit, things got crazy, and I started doing some research and digging in. And then I heard somebody tell me that the schools, if you'll recall, the schools were out. And so all the kids were doing school from home. And then the schools started back again. And when they started back again, I got a disturbing report that here in Twin Falls, that the schools had decided in their infinite wisdom, because of course we don't want the drinking fountains spreading COVID, we're going to shut off all their drinking fountains in the schools district. And so they sent a message home to the parents. We're getting ready to go back to in-person education. Make sure to send a water bottle with your kids. Well, if we know parents, first of all, a lot of them probably didn't even read the message. They didn't get it. They didn't pay attention. They don't care. They weren't reading it. Life is too busy, and they were moving on. And then, so a lot of kids didn't show up with water bottles, and the school had no, for whatever reason, then the school had no plan with how to deal with these kids that got to the school with no water bottles. It doesn't seem like a big deal, they'll make it through a day, I suppose. But it was like 100-degree weather outside. They were sending the kids outside for recess. They were playing, they were getting hot, they were getting dehydrated, and then they were putting them on buses, and they didn't have any air conditioning on the buses. And for whatever reason, they thought, we need to keep the windows up. Maybe they were scared that a little bit of breeze or something was going to spread COVID more dramatically through the bus. Yeah, for whatever reason, they decided that was a smart idea. And there were more things, and I was mad. I got on social media, as people do. We get on there, and well, I decided to do a video, and I explained, and I told everybody this was going on. Maybe a couple hundred people would see it. 25,000 views later, I'm getting a telephone call from the superintendent of schools, and he's saying, Mr. Class, can we talk? And I said, sure. It was Brady, and I said, yeah, let's go talk. So we sat down and we talked, and he explained that what was going on and why, and that he didn't realize that they were putting the windows up on it. Anyway, he resolved. He checked all the boxes. Said, "I just want you to know I'm doing this about the water. We're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this." And they were taking care of it. And he said, "Can you just go out to everybody? My phone's blowing up. My email's blowing up. Would you just do me a favor and tell everybody that we're resolving this?" I said, "Sure." I can't, I can't guarantee they're all going to see it. But I'll do another social media post. And I'll let you know. Well, after that, people started coming out of the woodworks, and I guess because I had a success there, I mean, I was just getting something off my chest. But as it turned out, it was effective, and people started calling me and sending me messages and saying, "Hey, this is going on at our work. This is going on at our school. This is going on here. This is going on there." And out of all of that was birthed Shane Talks Politics. And I have a reason for this story, so please don't go anywhere. Follow me for a minute. And so I started Shane Talks Politics, and I started paying even more attention to what was going on. I started digging in. And as I did, my voice became stronger. I suddenly found myself as a thrust into politics and as a person of influence. And as power does, it started to corrupt me. Not in a sense that I was using it for evil, but that once you realize that you can shift the needle, it's really easy to let that go to your head a little bit. And then I thought this automatically, this is just one man with one voice. I thought, well, man, this just makes so much sense. Why doesn't everybody rise up? Why can't I rally everybody? And we rallied a bunch of people. We went over and we fought down the mask mandates in Twin Falls. That was kind of what was leading into this. I had to mention that as well. We had a mayor, Sean Berriger, who then was the city, went back to city. Twin Falls City Council is really weird how they do it. We elect a city council, and they elect from themselves a mayor, which is nothing more than really just a figurehead. We have a soft mayor in Twin Falls. We have what's called we have a, some towns have a strong mayor where the mayor really kind of runs the city. Some have kind of what I call a soft mayor. Which we have, which is just the figurehead that comes out and gets to yap. And so our city council is kind of like, well, it's not who's the best suited. This is, well, whose turn is it this time? I guess we'll elect you. Well, it's okay. You've done it. Now it's somebody else's turn. And so Sean Berriger was the figurehead for a while, and then he got shifted back to city council member. But he was pushing. And Sean and it's important that you know that prior to this, I own a DJ company, and we were doing the sound for a lot of events. That Sean Berriger was also the head of the city of Twin Falls City Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce here, and he was using that position to. It turned out that he was rather a liberal, and I had become friends with Sean. I considered him a friend. And we'd see each other, we'd hang out, we'd have a couple drinks, we'd talk, we'd do a different sound system for different events that the chamber was doing. And then we'd DJ a little bit during that. It was good publicity for us. It was good for the chamber because it helped them with their sound system. And so through all of that, I had become friends and familiar with Sean, and he'd make sure to push business our way when the city needed it. And it was great. Okay. I wasn't in the middle of politics necessarily. This is just what I was doing. Well, then fast forward to COVID, and I found myself on the opposite end of the spectrum from Sean Berriger. And Sean was pushing for mask mandates. He was pushing for business closures. Can you imagine that? Your Chamber of Commerce, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, president of the chamber, is on the side of shutting businesses down, small businesses that need to survive. And he's on the side of shutting them down, to the extent that if he found one that was open, that he'd call the police and have them show up. And he was pushing for mask mandates. And I'm speaking out against this now. I find myself on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's important to note something about me. I'm not loyal to, when it comes to politics. When it comes to politics, I am loyal to the people. Even beyond friendships, even beyond power, even to my own detriment, as you're going to see, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, even to my own detriment and things that hurt my family. My speaking out against the head of the Chamber of Commerce wasn't good for my business. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my family. It wasn't good for my popularity in the town. Me speaking out against the mask mandates wasn't good for me politically. I was doing the sound system for all of the city events, and then they turned their back on me because I spoke out against what they were getting ready to do. I rallied 300 people to show up outside of City Hall, and then got and showed them, brought in experts and showed them what the truth was about COVID and what was going on with the masks and everything. And then 154 went next door and took their 3 minutes to speak out against the city. And the city at about 10:30, when we were on number 84, cried uncle and said, okay, we're not going to do the mask mandates. In fact, it was Sean Berger who stood up and said, this isn't popular. I think he was trying to save his own hide, his own tail, when he realized just how wildly unpopular this was, because they had 2 or 3 people maybe that spoke in favor of the mask mandates from the city. And then they had 154 that were signed up to tell them, you dirty, rotten, filthy scumbags, what are you doing to us? So he said, hey, I think we need to table this, and made a motion to table it, and they tabled it, and the rest is history. But that wasn't popular for me. That wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my family. As far as financially is concerned, it took a toll. In the end, we're fine. God takes care of us. But as I became bolder in my speech and speaking out and more angry about what was happening in the government, I was able to shift the needle. We won against the mask mandates, and our governor tried to push it through the health district, and in just 2.5 weeks, another 250 people showed up, and we won. And I started saying, when the people show up, we win. Well, then the schools were forcing the kids to wear masks. We weren't going to do that. We were one of only 2 families that would not let their kid put on a mask going to school, and sent them to school without it. And of course, after what happened with the city and what happened with the health district, the school board didn't want any of that. The superintendent didn't want any of that. And so they just let him get away with it. And we just said, no, you're not wearing your mask, go to school. And that was great. By the way, that was great for our son because we saw him through that. He had to go through, of course, being different. And he became stronger as a result of that, parents. I want to just make a little side note there. If you want your kids to be different and stronger, make them stand up for the right thing. Make them do the right thing. You'll be amazed at what that does in your child's life. But anyhow, so we were winning. But I thought it was interesting that 300 people would show up to find out the truth. 154 would go up and actually speak to their city council, which is amazing. And when the people showed up, we won. But then only a handful would show up to fight the school district when it was their kids that they were forcing the mask. Oh, don't put masks on me as an adult. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I'm no, you dirty, rotten government. I'm not going to let you do that to me, but you'll let them do it to your kids. And I got mad. And what many people don't know about me is I am autistic. I'm what's called a high masking autistic, which means that early in life I got tired of being called out. Shane, quit fidgeting. Shane, quit doing that. Shane, quit doing that. And I was different than everybody, and I was tired of being different. And I watched what everybody else did, and I started to pattern myself after what everybody else was like, just so that I wouldn't be so different. And it's exhausting, by the way, to try to act like everybody else when you're just different. And so I put on the mask, is what they call it. I started acting like everybody else. And so that went undiagnosed for a long time. In 3rd grade, they decided that I had attention deficit disorder. But as an adult, I do research. I'm infatuated with research. And I started looking at it and said, well, it doesn't really fit. It fits some areas, but it doesn't fit others. And later in life, I realized that I did have a attention deficit disorder, but I also had autism. And some of you are out there going, "Oh, ADD doesn't exist." We can debate that another day. That's a whole different ball game. But at the end of the day, we can have what's called a meltdown, and this is relevant because we're watching this happen. This last week, we watched this happen with Elon Musk. Have what's called a meltdown. And that meltdown is caused by lack of sleep. So when I get into something and I start researching, I imagine he's probably the same. Most autistic people will do this. When I sit down to research something, and during COVID, I will forget to eat. I will forget to sleep. I will just dive in and just target whatever it is that's on my mind until it's resolved. And Rhonda, God bless her, my fiance, who I'm getting married this next Saturday, she'll bring food and set it in front of me, and bring things to, orange juice and sit it in front of me, because I'll forget. And so I would go days and days and days like this. And what I started hyper focusing on was, why won't people show up for their kids? And I had a meltdown on camera, and on social media. And that's just a terrible thing. And but I was frustrated both in my inability to rally the people to show up, and the people's their lack of concern to show up and fight for their kids when they would fight for themselves. And this just didn't jive well for me, and I found it frustrating. And just to that point, when Elon and Doge was formed, and he brought in a whole bunch of autistic geniuses to sit down and form Doge and start digging in, if you'll notice, what did they do? They put them in cubicles, and they gave them cots, and they gave them different snacks and things that were in there, because it's just a trait. I know what was going on. I know why they put them in there, because they probably dug in just like they did, and they'll forget they'll just work themselves to exhaustion, and then fall down on the cot for a little while, catch an hour or two, and then as soon as they wake up, their mind's racing on it again. It was probably racing on it while they were asleep, and then they jumped up and dig right back into work. And so putting the cots in there was a necessity, not just a kindness. It was something that they would need in order to function that way. But so we see this happening with Elon too, and he just had a major meltdown and got frustrated with Congress not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and saw this big beautiful bill that had all this pork and all this extra spending, and he was opposite. It saw Congress, all this work that he donated his time, his life, his effort, his talents, his mind, to helping to out all of the government corruption and spending, and clean all of that up and help put systems and processes in place. And then he gets frustrated. And when he gets frustrated, what happens? He just goes crazy. And everybody's like, what in the world is going on with Elon? We've seen this happen a couple times. Why is he suddenly just acting so nuts? Elon, you shouldn't be on social media. Elon, you shouldn't be doing this. Elon. And then Trump and the feud began this last round, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But that is a trait that goes along with it's God in His infinite wisdom gave us a higher level of intelligence, but and I don't say that arrogantly, but to keep us humble, I think He gave us things like meltdowns and made us a little bit weird. A little different around people, just to remind us that we're still fallible. Anyhow, so I got to where I was having meltdowns, and I also was putting my faith in myself and my own strength and my own power and in my own voice, and God got a hold of me and took that really from me. I needed to take some time away, and I spent quite a bit of time away. And then I got my heart right with God. Found a good church. We found a church here in Twin Falls. And by the way, if you're looking for a church in Twin Falls, Kingdom Church down on Shoshone Street is a phenomenal non-denominational church where the pastor really truly believes that we need to do away with the tradition and just get back to preaching the Bible. And we saw a change. Our boy had started going there, and we saw that just a massive change in his life. And he really dug in, and he started saving up his money so that he could go to youth events and go preach on the streets and do things. I mean, it's just amazing what we've seen God do in his life through that church. And so we started going there, and God just started doing His work in me. And one day, fairly recently, I went to Rhonda and I said, hold on, because I believe God's calling me back into the battle. And she knew what I meant by that, back into the political fight to try to keep Idaho. And I really didn't know why. I was feeling this draw, this just from inside my spirit, just saying that, you need to be doing this, Shane. And I really felt like that was what was God leading me to do. And that was the day that I took action, was the day that I told Rhonda to hang on tight. And she said, you do what you feel God's leading you to do. Go do it. About a week later, I got a telephone call from Daniel Bobinski. And he said, I believe God's calling me into more ministerial work. And he was as many of you know, he was the president, founder of True Idaho News. And he called me and he goes, and I think God's telling me that you're supposed to be the one to take it. Okay, God's calling me back to the battle. A week later, I get this telephone call. It's pretty obvious, but I still stopped and I said, "I'll pray about it," and you pray about it, and here I am. So that's kind of the history. Just for those of you who don't know me, I think it's important to note some of these because I'm going to talk about a few things today that are relevant to this history. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about why I'm here and why I'm doing this, but also my commitment to, I was asked to pray for the media during the International Day of Prayer. I got a message saying, "Hey, will you pray for the media?" Well, if anybody needs prayer, it's the media, And so I showed up, and I'm all geared up and ready to get up and talk about the evil, terrible media. And I heard this word in my mind that God just kept giving me. And I told Daniel, as a matter of fact, I called him and we were talking. And I said, "By the way," I said, this word, as I'm thinking about what to pray about, ravenous vipers kept coming up. And so I had this great little message. I was going to talk about the ravenous vipers of the media. And instead, when everybody began to pray, I realized that, I was asking the wrong question. I was asking God I was asking myself what I should pray about. And instead, I realized I should be asking God what he wanted me to pray about. And I stood up and I said, we don't have any media here. I asked if anybody was a member of the media. They showed up for a quick picture and left. And I said, "Isn't that strange? They're not here." And I said, so what I'm going to ask you to do is pray for me and pray that I don't let the Satan sway me to use my voice and to put my faith and my trust in myself, but to always keep my trust in God with what I'm doing here, because he put me here. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that this is of him that I'm doing this. So anyhow, that aside, my loyalties are to God, my family, and the people of the state of Idaho. That's where my loyalties lie. And so when I'm ever called to question over a certain politician, I might find a favor in a politician, and I might believe that they're doing the right thing. But just like Sean Berger, my life has already proven, even before. I want to make this clear because I'm going to talk about something here in a second. Before I got my heart right with God, I was still being used by God, but I was in this tussle between my power and his power, and trying to do it on my own, like a lot of people try to do. They try to do things on their own. And I was in this little tug of war, but even then, I didn't hold my loyalties weren't to some group. It wasn't to some politician. It was to the people of the state of Idaho. I am the kind of guy that when I was raised up would always stand up to the bully that was bullying somebody. I'd step in between them and say, "Hey, this isn't going to happen. You want to pick on somebody, pick on me. Don't pick on them." And that's just been my history. I fight for people. So I want you to know that I will use this platform for those of you who have been following me in the past and saw me go down that road. Those who don't know who I am, I will use this platform always to speak on behalf of the people and to bring the news to you of what's going on with that in mind. And I owe no loyalties to a politician as a politician. Now, as people, sure, I'm a loyal person to my friends, and I'm that kind of a person. But I will immediately call you out if you start doing something that's against the people, against the Constitution, and against our rights. You infringe on the rights of the people, I'm going to call you out for it. And it's important to note that, and that's going to come up here in a moment. So all of that being said, shifting out of that, I guess I should go ahead and do this. We had something come up. In the shift between Daniel and I, where there's a donation page on True Idaho News. If you go to trueidahonews.com, there's a place for donations. You can go down, you can donate. And we're making some changes to kind of how that's going to work, by the way. But a payment, somebody had set up an automatic payment, an influencer, has about 31,500 followers on X. I'm not going to call her out by name. I'm not going to do that. If she wants to call me out, she can call me out. But I'm not going to do that, people. In this case, she's not a politician. She's an influencer and somebody who had been following True Idaho News. But there's been a rift that's happened within our legislature in Idaho to the conservative movement. Now, you'll notice we had all the rhinos, and before COVID, we had just the typical rhinos in the establishment. And occasionally we get a few good representatives that were in there, but really it was just people weren't paying attention. And when people started paying attention, we put a lot of better people, more conservatives who appeared to be more conservative, godly people in office. But as time will tell, you kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and we start finding out who truly is in it for the people and who are following God's will, and you start finding others who aren't. And we've seen this rift happen lately in Idaho, and because we, Daniel and myself, have chosen to uplift the 8 legislators who we truly believe have your interest in mind, who are not in it for their own pride, who aren't in it for their own gain, who truly are staying prayerfully and in God's word, are leading us down the path of in Idaho of staying conservative. Okay, in this battle for Idaho's conservative soul. Who are on the right side of the battle. So we've put our faith behind them, not faith, but our support behind them. There's the other side, which includes some legislators who have, by the way, who have conservative voting records. Heather Scott has a great conservative voting record, but has ended up on the other side of this, and they're mad. There's people. This specific influencer is mad about it. In fact, it was at about mid-May. We did a show. I did a show on highlighting the corruption between IACI and their power in the state, and our governor and Holland and Hart as the attorneys, and the power that they have that they shouldn't have in our state. Highlighting that, and somebody sent that over to this particular influencer, and her response was absolutely well. Here, I'll just bring it up real quick. Again, I'm not going to mention names. I'm not about that. That's not what I'm here to do in this case. And some of you may think that I should. But the response was very much, I won't post that. I just wanted to make sure I did. Sorry, he bought True Idaho News from Babinski, and it's another arm of media for Maria Nate. I thought that was an interesting statement, but as to the reason why she wouldn't share that video. Just like I won't share the Dispatch or IFF or anything to do with the Nates. They think if they gobble up enough outlets, they can weasel their way into media control. It's all to counter Brandy and I. Sorry, I won't promote any of theirs. So anyway, I thought this was an interesting remark. And if this is what's being shared out about me, I just won't dig into the trenches. I don't want to get into feuds. I don't want to get into that kind of stuff. It's just not who I am. I don't care. Say what you want, whatever. But if this is being told to these people, this is probably the story being told to everyone out there, that I'm a media arm, that I'm a shill for the Nates. Well, first of all, the Nates had nothing to do with me getting started in this. It was not a part of it whatsoever. I told you my story just so that I can make sure that you understand that that's not why I did this. The Nates didn't call me up and say, I think you ought to gobble up True Idaho News so that you can speak well of us. There was no conversation with the Nates. There was no conversation with the Dispatch or Idaho Freedom Foundation, with Ron Nate, with Maria Nate. Although I will tell you this, I think they're on the right side of things for Idaho. Okay. And that Idaho Freedom Foundation is a very fair method of, they use a very good methodology. They use solid methodology when it comes to determining. They rate legislation. They will look at all the legislation that's coming out in Idaho, and they will rate that legislation on a matrix that they're very open and honest about. and they just tell you. So they rate the legislation. Well, then the legislator, as a result, gets a rating based on how they voted on that. And by the way, when they rate the legislation, it hasn't even been voted on yet, so they can't taint or skew which representatives get a favorable rating or not, because it's all based on the legislation first before anybody votes for it. But for some reason, some people in this state have gotten it into their head that the Idaho Freedom Foundation skews their rating system on the legislature. Well, guess what? The legislator essentially rates themselves by how they vote on the legislation. It's already posted before they ever gets voted on, whether they thought it was a good, if it is increasing government power or the power of or giving the people back the power, if it's increasing spending or decreasing spending. And so I find it interesting that first of all, that these people are now enemies of Idaho Freedom Foundation. Well, if you got an unfavorable rating, it's because you weren't voting for legislation the right way. You were voting for legislation that was increasing government power and increasing spending. That's it. I mean, it's on yourself. I'm sorry. If you don't like it, vote different. And if you don't like the way, and this is what happens with people. We get so attached to a politician that we'll fight tooth and nail for them even when they're doing the wrong things. And this is part of my point today. But anyhow, so just to answer this question, if you're hearing this from anybody, I want to make it clear. I had no conversation with the Nates. They weren't even on the radar. I one day felt, not one day, for a couple of weeks, several weeks, I was feeling the tug that I needed to get back into this from God. And and I prayed about it. And he said, Shane, you need to get back in the battle. And I told Rhonda I need to get back in the battle. And Rhonda said, well, if that's what God's telling you to do, I will support you. I think you need to get back in the battle too. And then I get a call from Daniel Wabinski a week later asking me to buy True Idaho News, telling me he thinks I'm the right person to take it over. And here I am today. That's it. Plain and simple, cut and dry, end of story. So just to make that very clear. But this is the problem. We have legislators that have a disagreement. Most of how they vote, they are voting still conservatively. Some are not. But some of our legislators have got caught up in the idea that they need the power, that they need more influence. And instead of getting on their knees to find that influence, they're going to Mike Moyle and they're going to the wrong people, and they're buddying up and cozying up because they want chair seats, because they want more control. And there was a sermon yesterday at this same church that I was talking about that really impressed upon me. Sometimes in the Bible, we have there's a passage in the Bible that we skip over because in Sunday school, this particular one he brought up David and Goliath. And so we read in our Bible and we get to this section. Well, I already know this story. We skip over it and go and read something else. Well, I went back after that sermon yesterday because it really impressed something on my heart. And I read it again this morning. And here's what it basically boiled down to, was that when Israel went up against the Philistines, they were looking for wealthy men to be their savior. They were looking for strong men to be their savior. And they sat there for 40 days with the Philistines taunting them, and Goliath coming up 9.5 feet tall saying, bring me your guy, send him out. Is nobody going to come out here and fight me? Get out here and send your strongest warrior, send your best. And if you win, we'll bow down to you. But if we win, you'll bow down to us. Send them out. And they trembled. And then comes along David. God sent David, a sheep herder. But as a sheep herder, he wasn't wealthy. He wasn't this big warrior that everybody knew of. But protecting his flock, he went up against lions. He went up against bears, and he won. And so his faith was in God, and he was a godly man, and God sent David. And even then, when he went to Saul and he found favor, and Saul found favor in him. And he started putting on armor, putting on man's armor. And he said, I've never gone to battle in this. I can't, learn how to move in this. This is not my armor. I haven't had a chance to test this. And he threw it off and put his faith in God. And he went out there with 5 stones. Now we think of a slingshot as a pink. That's not really what they have a sling. And if you've ever watched a video on YouTube of somebody throwing a rock with those, it's a powerful weapon if it's in the right hands, but it's not the one that I would have chosen to go up against a 9.5-foot giant that had a spear and had a sword and had all of his strength. And that's who the Philistines put their power in, the famous Goliath. Saul sent Daniel because Daniel came to Saul and said, God told me to go out there. And by the way, I have defeated lions and I have defeated bears. And I will go out and I will use that same thing when I go up against Saul. And so he gets out there and he's a pretty boy and he's a tiny guy. And Saul's and Goliath is kind of, ha, 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 ha. But and we all know how that story ended. But as I look out into our nation today, and I look at who we're putting our faith in, and our legislators, and I look at who they're putting their faith in, and I see a lot of them putting their faith in a chair seat. They're putting their faith in the almighty Mike Moyle. And they're putting their faith, in fact, one of the members there was a group that would get together and pray every morning before they went, our legislators to get together and pray, and one of them got saved. And as soon as that happened, a bunch of them stopped showing up to pray. This concerns me. And if you're a Christian, it ought to concern you a lot that several of them got upset, just like happens in churches. It happened to me over a dozen years ago. I was at a church and I got mad. And what do? We never get mad up. We get mad down. And by that, I mean, I got mad at the people in the church. Well, I didn't trade up. I decided to go out and become basically an agnostic and a heathen for 10 years of my life. And we tend to do that. And they got mad at God's people. And what did they do? They stopped showing up to pray. That's your answer. When you have a disagreement over how we ought to run our state, you call yourself a Christian and you stop showing up to pray. That's your answer. That's where you're going to find your strength. And we need to start paying attention to how these people are acting. And are they acting in a godly manner or not? Because it's not going to be Elon Musk that saves this country. I know a lot of people put faith in Elon Musk to be the one to save. Oh, he bought X and he's going to save the country because we now have a voice. All hail the great Elon Musk. And then a lot of you put your faith in Trump. I voted for Trump. I support Trump. I think he ought to be there. But we have a problem in this country where all of the people are saying, all hail Trump. Trump's our savior. Trump walks on water in some people's minds. And it doesn't matter what he says and what he does. Well, we just need to trust the process. We just need to trust Trump. We just need to trust the process. No. People, I put some statistics together. And let's just go over this for a second. I was curious. I was curious today, and I said, what percentage of Americans pray daily? Now, I'm going to be surprised. I'm honest. I was surprised when I read this. I was actually shocked. I thought it was a lot less than this. And praise God, people are praying. According to most recent data, 44% of American adults say they pray daily, based on a 2024, so last year's Pew Research Religious Landscape Study. Now, it's down from 58%. I don't think that's a great thing. In 2007 and 57% in 2015, with most of the drop occurring between 2015 and 2021. Okay, so anyway, about half, right? About half of Americans say that they pray daily. Now, I wanted to break that down a little bit more. And I said, what percentage of American men pray daily? And we find it's only 37%, about a third. Now, that's disturbing to me. I'm glad that we have women praying. 52% of women are praying. I'm glad that we have godly women that are praying daily. But men who are supposed to be the leaders and the religious leaders, the spiritual leaders, and the financial and the leaders of our country, they're supposed to be the ones out there on the front lines. And they're not putting on the whole armor of God. I find that a little concerning, but not surprising. But here, this is the one I want you to pay attention to, because then I ask the next question. What percentage of Americans read their Bible daily? And it's 11%. Now, I don't find that surprising at all when I look across the country because, here's what we have a tendency to do. We have a tendency to say, God, our country is in peril. Save our country. Or maybe you're not praying for our country. Maybe it's, man, it's getting expensive out there. God, I don't know how we're going to pay our bills today, because isn't that what we do? Isn't that what we do when we everything's holly jolly and everything's great? We just kind of coast through life. But then when things get tight, when things get tough, then, oh God, we need your help. God, please help us. Please help us. Please help us. And then what do? We flee to social media. Because when you take a look, approximately 73% of Americans use social media daily, but 11% are in their Bible. Where are we going to for our answers? We pray to God to help us, and then we go to social media for our answers. And the reason I'm doing this is True Idaho News. I'm fighting for my state. I'm fighting for my country. The only reason I do this, because it costs me and my family dearly, but the only reason I do this is because I feel God is leading me to come out here and do this, to fight for our state. But it's not going to be a person who saves us. It's not going to be Elon. It's not going to be Trump. It's not going to be some legislator that's going to save us. It's going to be God. And until we hit our knees, and not just hit our knees, but then open up the Bible instead of social media to look and see, how is social media, how is Elon working today? How is Trump working today? How is my favorite legislator working today? What are they doing for me today? What have you done for me lately? Instead of opening up the Bible and asking God, how do you want to use me? What do you want of me? Because the Bible, that's where God speaks to you. God will speak to you through the Bible and through his word. And if you're not in the word, how can we get any good guidance? And when 10 out of 100 people, 100 out of 1,000 people are in their Bible daily, that's not very good for our country. It's not going to be a person. We got to get this country back to its roots, back to its Christian roots. And if half of you are out there praying daily, but only 1 in 10 take the time to open up the Bible, but we have plenty of time for social media. I think the message God had for me today, that I'm just trying to be the spokesperson. I'm just trying to be the mouth for what he lays on my heart. And I know you didn't come here for a sermon. That's not my intentions today. But my intention is to give you what I truly believe, how I truly believe we're going to get this state back on its feet, back on course, set the sails right again, get our compass pointing towards north again. It's not through a politician. It's not through a wealthy tech guru. It's not through Trump. Yeah, God saved Trump. Guess what? God also saved Saul, and Saul was trying to kill David. But it's when we truly get on our knees and get back into the Word, that's where we're going to find our answers. We need to stop looking everywhere else. I've got some more that I want to talk about, but before that, I got some bills to pay. And I'm going to do that right here.
What they can do to help True Idaho News.
One of the things you can do is simply like and share our videos and subscribe to the channel. We're on Facebook, X, and YouTube. And by liking, subscribing, and sharing, you cause the algorithm on these social media platforms to put our videos in front of more viewers, thus helping us to influence more voters with conservative content and educational videos. But one of the other ways you can help is simply by supporting our sponsor, which today is my company, By Design Technology. By Design Technology is a tech company where we specialize in transforming your home into a haven of entertainment and security. By Design Technology has the expertise to make your home smart, secure, and ready for family fun. With over 35 years of experience, we are the Magic Valley's trusted experts in home technology. Our team specializes in TV installations by mounting your flat screen on the wall with concealed cabling for a seamless professional look. This is ideal for your living room, your bedroom, or even your patio. But we also bring the magic of the movie theater to your home with stunning home theater systems complete with crystal clear sound and visuals. For peace of mind, we install security cameras to protect your family and your property. Enjoy music throughout your home with our distributed audio systems and stay connected with reliable internet through our Starlink satellite installations. Whether you're moving into an existing home or planning new construction, our team can help you every step of the way. So visit bydesigntech.com. That's bydesigntech.com. BYDESIGNTEK.com. Or call us today for a free consultation and experience the difference with By Design technology. Now, back to our program. All right, everybody. So you're going to start seeing some commercials on here because, hey, it costs a lot of money to keep this thing afloat between the program, to stream it out to all the different platforms, the time that I have to give up running my company and doing the work that I do. So we're going to run some commercials. If you want to help be a sponsor, reach out to me. We'd love to have you. But in the meantime, I guess I'm sponsoring myself. You might as well know who it is that's paying for all of this. So anyhow, so kind of back to my point. I want to get back to this individual that the influencer. Again, I'm not going to mention who it is. But so here's what happened in the transition. In the transition between Danielle and I, there's a donation page that you can go on to on trueidahonews.com, and you can set up a reoccurring payment if you want to. And this individual has set up a $20 reoccurring payment. I don't even look at that. I don't know. It's not something I'm paying attention to at this point in my time. But you control turning that on and turning that off. It's right there. You can go on and decide if you want the payments to go through. Well, so what happened is this individual reached out and said, hey, I need to stop the payment. And then I shot a message over to the people that are taking care of that. And apparently it didn't get changed fast enough. I think the individual actually tried to call her, but somehow didn't get through. Well, then I get this nasty message. And the nasty message, let me help you out. The next time I'm charged, I'm going to spotlight your handle for the gang of Nate propagandists that you are. I'm going to tell everyone on here, this is through X, I'm going to tell everyone on here to not even dream of donating or watching. Then I'll cancel my debit card. Okay, whatever. I shot a screenshot that said, hey, here's proof. I did send it over to them. Sorry, we'll get it figured out. And they reached out and got it sorted out. But here's my point. And I'm sorry that happened. I'll reach in my pocket and get it over $20. Okay. And then the nastiness continued. The nastiness just continued beyond that. But I'm going to use my platform of 31,000 people to destroy somebody who is trying to fight for the same conservative values that you are in the state. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to destroy you because I don't like the way that you. I have some conspiracy that I think that you're controlled by the Nates. And this is the problem in our conservative movement. We are destroying ourselves from within. But here's what I want to say. Is this the way a godly person handles things? That's what I really want to ask. Is this who this is who, I'm sorry, but the Heather Scotts and the Moyles and those types of people, this is who they're shilling for. This is who they're all hanging around. They're all buddy with. And this is the heart that they have right now. And I'm seeing this heart rear its ugly head within the conservative movement. And they are seeking to destroy good legislators, godly legislators like Glenita and David and Josh. And these are godly people who I know are in their Bible daily. These are the kind of people who are praying. These are the kind of people who are trying to lead this not on their own strength. And so I want to ask you, if they want to go out and here's my message. If you want to use your 31,000 followers to destroy me and tell them not to even in the word, I'll just quote the words. I will tell everyone on here to not even dream of donating or watching, then I'll cancel my debit card. Guess what? Do it. Do it. I don't care. I'm not here for popularity. I'm not here for donations. Yes, it costs money to do this. Yes, I would love it if some of y'all would help me out with the finances on this, okay? Things are tight for me right now in my company. Doing this has cost me dearly, but I continue to do it because I think it's the right thing to do in this state. So I would love it, but I'm not going to change the way I act. I'm not going to change what I say. I'm not going to change my paradigm. I'm not going to shift. I'm not going to shift my support from one person to the next because you're threatening to out me as being a shill for the Nates or whatever weird, wild conspiracy theory you have in your head. Look, all I have to do is look at the attitude and the way that you're handling things and what you're saying to me and the way you're saying it to understand that this isn't a person who is relying on God's wisdom to direct them. And so what you have to say to me has no effect. And what you have to say out there, I am not putting my faith in you. I'm not putting my faith in my followers. I don't put my faith in any politician. So say what you want to about me. But to threaten me? Have at it. You know, I said, just be careful. My response was be careful because if you defame me or slander me, I'll just hand it over to an attorney and let them deal with it. But if that's the path you want to go, but I also said, but I think this is it's sad that we should be working more together, even if we don't align on 100% of things. But rather than doing this to each other and trying to destroy each other, how about we all hit our knees together? How about you guys go back and start sitting down together and praying and then let God work it out, your differences? Because that's what our state needs. It doesn't need this. It doesn't need this nastiness. And I'm talking to the legislators that are out there that are on both sides of this fight. Idahoans deserve better. We need better. I am preaching to you now, if you want to call it preaching. Stop. Stop the infighting. You are destroying every chance we have of getting this state back on track over pettiness, petty garbage like this. You need to knock it off. If you truly have the interests of Idaho in mind, get back together, sit down together, and pray. Open your Bible instead of opening up social media. Quit trying to take people who are just trying to do the same thing. Idaho Freedom Foundation is out there not for their own gain. They're out there for their state. Maybe you disagree with them, but how about you sit down and you have lunch together and you start off that lunch meeting with a little bit of prayer. It starts it on the right note. Because we are going to lose our state, and not just our state, we're going to lose our country because we're putting our faith in people. And people will always let you down. I'll let you down someday. I promise you. Not intentionally. I don't mean to. I don't want to. But I'm human. And that's all I've got for you today. God bless everybody. That's what happens when you let me have the microphone without somebody else on here. But I just feel like it has to be said. We are in trouble. We are heading down the wrong path. And if you want to start getting nasty, do it. But that's the heart. That's the heart. And I'm asking you, the voters, I'm asking you, the people of Idaho, pay attention when you don't have something logical, you don't have evidence, you don't have truth on your side, you start attacking people. Every time. Every time. So look who's attacking people and look who's attacking policies.